Hello, this is Teresa Moore with the SABE GoVoter project. I'd like to welcome our distance training states to the distance training webinar series. This is the evaluation webinar of the toolkit and the different tools that we made available to you for your training. Today we'll be talking with the states about the different trainings that they've done, and we look forward to sharing that information with you. Next slide, please. The thing that you need to know is that this webinar is being recorded, so you can listen to it later. If you have a question, please say your name and the state you're from and ask your question. And we want to make sure often that we ask you if you have questions and give you a moment to ask it, or you can type it into the chat box if for some reason we are not able to hear you, or if that's more comfortable for you. Go ahead. We are going to ask that you again say your name, the state you're with, and the group that you're representing today. We have a number of different groups that have been part of the teams for the distance training in the states. So it's good for us to hear the different partnerships that you've had and what group you're representing. So go back to me. So we're going to go ahead and have our representatives from California just tell us who is with you today and on your team. So California, Gabe or Terry, who would like to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. This is Gabe. So I am Gabe Taylor. I'm the voting rights advocate for Disability Rights California, which is the protection and advocacy agency for the state, one of them. And I worked with Terry Lance, who's an advocate at United Cerebral Palsy of Los Angeles, and they also cover Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. But I'll let Terry talk a little bit more about what UCP is. So,
go ahead, Terry.
Hi, this is Terry Lance, and I'm with California, and I've had the pleasure of working not only with the self-advocates at UCP in Los Angeles, actually in Culver City in this case, but also with Gabriel Taylor and Disability Rights of California.
Thank you, Terry. And then we're going to go ahead and have our group from Indiana introduce themselves. Start with your name, again, your state, and what group you're representing.
Hi, this is Christine Delaney from the Indiana Advocacy. We're called Indiana Disability Rights. And I'm here with my...
Can you speak a little louder? We're picking up some distortion. I'm sorry, we're still struggling with your mic. It was working fine.
How's this?
That's much better.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Kristen from Indiana Disability Rights. We're the P&A for Indiana, and I'm in the room with my colleague from the same agency. Her name is Carolina Moss, and we both work in communication and outreach, but a lot of what we do involves voting rights. And then we also have our partners from the Self-Advocates of Indiana. We have the Self-Advocate President, Kelsey Cowley, and the Self-Advocate Administrator, Amanda Circle.
Okay. And Amanda, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Oh, I mean, yeah, this is Amanda Circle. I'm the administrator for Self Advocates of Indiana. I also work for the ARC of Indiana.
And who else did you have in your room, Kelsey? Is
Yeah,
that right?
my name is Kelsey Kelly, and I'm the Self Advocates of Indiana president.
Nice to have you here. And Tom, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us what state you're from and what group you'll be representing today. All right, you're live, Tom.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Tom.
Hi, sorry I am late.
No problem. We're just glad you're here.
I am too, I think.
And what state are you from and what group do you represent?
Sorry, I'm Tom Nassau with Arkansas, representing Disability Rights Arkansas.
And do we have any of your other team members available today?
Darren should be on the phone.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if Alan Plumley or Eric Treat is on the phone, but they were both notified of it, of the call.
Okay.
Darren, yeah.
It seems like maybe they're not on or they might be having difficulty.
Okay, why don't, do you mind if I just run down to his office and see where he's at? I see his line lit.
Sure. Let's have you go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and mute you so you can take care of that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, we're really happy that you guys are all able to be with us today to talk about your projects. I was really excited to see all the different information that you were able to provide, and we look forward to having you share it with the other states, how your trainings went, and we have just a few questions. You don't have to feel rushed, and because we want you to have an opportunity to ask each other questions if you hear something that you're curious about or want more information about, or we know that this is an exciting voting year for us ahead, and that some groups are planning to do more trainings, and any information that you provide your fellow states will be helpful to them as they use the training to continue their outreach efforts. Let's go to the next slide, please. So basically, we're going to start with your training team, because the relationship between the self-advocacy organization and the protection and advocacy organization, in many states called the disability rights organization, is a very important relationship that adds to the quality and the friendliness of the training for individuals who may be joining voting for the first time or may have some information that they want to share. So we know that this relationship has been one of the most critical to the success of the training. So we want to know how many self-advocate co-trainers and how many P&A staff co-trainers you have on each of your teams. So we will give Arkansas a few minutes to join together with their team members, and so we'll go ahead and talk to California about their team.
Okay. This is Gabe again. We had myself representing the P&A, Disability Rights California, and so I was the main point person for our organization. And then Terry, who is the advocate who works with the self-advocacy groups at UCP. And so we partnered together for our trainings, and we brought in several representatives from the chapters of the League of Women Voters for the state of California, who worked with us on several pieces of our training. And in addition to that, we also brought in county staff, because one of the things that DRC does is we work statewide with a lot of the county elections officials throughout the state. And we collaborate on trainings pretty regularly. So we were able to collaborate with the county staff for LA County who brought out one of their the new voting systems that they're going to be starting to use beginning in 2020 for the presidential elections. So they were able to come out and provide a demonstration of the new voting system, and they were able to give folks a chance in the audience to use the voting system and try it out for themselves, and also get a chance to see all of the different accessibility features that it provides voters with disabilities. So
Great. There's some great partnerships there.
yeah.
How about in Indiana? How many self-advocate trainers and PNA staff co-trainers?
This is Amanda. So from Self Advocates of Indiana, we had Kelsey and I representing, and then we had Kristen and Carolina from Indiana Disability Rights as the PNA staff co-trainers.
That's great.
We also had some extra help from my supervisor here at the Arc of Indiana and Kristen and Carolina, supervisor at Indiana Disability Rights.
So both supervisors, that's very helpful to have their support on your team. And are you back, Tom or Darren? Are you with us?
And Darren's here as well.
Can y'all hear me?
We're just talking about the training team. How many self-advocate co-trainers and how many PNA co-trainers?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then. You were asking what now?
How many self-advocate trainers did you have and how many PNA trainers did you have?
Hold on 1 second. It was myself and my co-worker, Chris. I can't pronounce his last name. But we had about 20 people there at the training that we had. And
if Darren, can I fill in a gap real quick?
Yes.
Okay. So Eric Treat was also, so we had 2 self-advocates and 1 representative from the protection and advocacy system. And then we had Michelle Bishop from NDRN join us at the later part of the training. Very, very late training, but so 2, 1, and 1.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about where your training was. How did you advertise your training? Because that's one of the biggest questions. Or was it at a location where there was already a fixed audience that you were presenting to? Or did you advertise it and make it like a fully public event? did you have any additional resources and supports? And I know some of you have mentioned them, but it's okay to mention them again because it's helpful to folks that may listen to this later. So let's go ahead and Tom and Darren, do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about where was your training? How did you advertise it? And supports that you had?
Well, for myself, I know we had it at the 5 Point Sheraton Hotel here in Little Rock, in one of their meeting rooms. I know we were trying to get the word out to people about the training, and we did it at time, a lot of applies. So I talked to one of the people I be out with that runs one of the facilities. And I told her about it, and I told her how many people who was looking to try to get to be there, and she had about that number of people that she had within her group that she ended up bringing to it. So that's why, as I said, with the sister UCP group that came out, but they all did come out and get some training that we as they did go out, and we got it together where we had all of the necessary paperwork and voter. We had the voter training, not training, but the voter registration cards, and I spoke about how important that voting was to everyone, including being a self-advocate, that it's important for everybody to get out and vote. And my coworker Chris, he also spoke on the importance of voting, and we got about, I believe, 5 or 10 people. I forget how many exactly, but it was a few that wasn't registered but did register at our meeting.
So it was a organized group that you invited to come over to the hotel and learn about it.
Yes, it was. They was part of the UCP group.
Yeah, and we also this is Tom. We also sent out flyers and posted it on our Facebook and social media, and shared it with our partners across the state. And one of the difficulties that we had in trying to get people to attend the training was transportation, and because a lot of self-advocates rely on their providers for transportation. We don't have a very good public transportation system in the state. So that was a huge barrier to get people to attend for it as well.
But yes, but as I said, with Angie Quarter, the lady who worked at UCP, she did show interest, and she very dedicated to helping the advocates here in her group, even if else wasn't. She was able to bring them out and make sure she got the transportation bus to bring those people out to the meeting.
So it was well supported by the organization to bring them in their transportation.
Yes, with their using their transportation to bring them out.
Okay. So it sounds like you talked to the right people. And a flyer went out. I heard you say that you registered some people on site. How many from the community did you register?
Hold on, I'm trying to see if that was in the I got it in front of me. Trained, please tell us about the number of people other than as I believe it was about 4. I know it was about 4 or 5 people that registered. I really can't remember the exact number. I don't see it here in the report. The thing I have to see some answers, but if I'm not mistaken, it was about 3 or 4 or something like that registered, because most of the other ones that was there did say they was registered and had voted in the past.
Yeah. So from the community, you had about 4 or 5 people that responded to your flyer, in addition to the UCP group.
To respond to our flyers.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I thought you were talking about that was registered to vote. Oh, yes.
So the number of people who RSVP'd due to the flyers, we had I think 3, and the rest were clients of UCP.
Okay. I was just curious how successful
Yeah.
that was.
Yeah, it was very difficult. I don't know why, because people really wanted the information, but it was really difficult to get people on board.
I understand. It's something that we're learning with our training is that sometimes it's more successful number-wise to have a fixed group. So that's that's why that question's so important.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and Gabe and Terry, why don't you tell us where was your training? How did you advertise your training? And were there any additional resources? You mentioned some earlier, and it's okay to mention them again.
Okay.
We used one of our UCP locations in Culver City. It's an adult program. So there were probably about 40 self-advocates and 10 support staff. And we actually invited the self-advocates invited some other people there. So there were, I believe, 3 parents and some support people that work with them as counselors. So we had a good group, and we totally empathize with other affiliates throughout the nation. Transportation is always key, but that's something that we do, religiously on a daily basis. We track rides and work with access services here in the county. I think the materials we used were really well received, but I think the biggest draw was probably the speakers that we had come out from Women's League of Voters and from the Los Angeles County Voter Registrar Office, and also the machines, because a lot of the self-advocates I work with have actually given input into creating the new technology that Los Angeles County will be using in 2020. And so they literally got on the machines with a kind of mock ballot, and used their hands, their feet, their whatever part of their body they could use. And it was pretty exciting. They really, I think all of LA County has really worked hard, and they've really included everyone in the process, creating the ballots, the new ballots, and the new machines. So it was pretty exciting.
That does sound like you guys did a lot of organizing. And later we'll talk about the structure of your training. It was a little bit different. And, I think that might be something that people want to consider in the future.
Well, the other thing too, if I might just add something, is that we were able to sort of incorporate a lot of the resources in the toolkit. And the really great part is we had, I mentioned this in my report, but we had several discussions talking about folks' reactions to the videos, and a lot of them chimed in with similar experiences that they've had, given the situations that were addressed in the videos, and talking about different ways that have worked for them in the past of resolving those situations and those problems. And it was really helpful because some of them said, that addressing, using that that method that was brought up in the video has worked before, but here's something that I did that worked even better and was a little bit more efficient in resolving the problem or the issue. So it was really great having that dialogue and sort of incorporating some of the the resources in the toolkit to sort of strengthen the material and the discussion.
Yeah, I enjoyed hearing that that the discussion was really helped by having the examples. And if you have some that you would like to share offline with us another time about the different techniques or how people handled issues, we're always looking for information to add to those scenarios so that people can have lots of options.
For sure, yeah. Well, we can. One of the ideas that I had, I mean, I mentioned this in the report, but that might be really helpful is to have folks in the states that have already been a part of the project to maybe do like a resource list of like thing, you know, whether it's the situations um, or organizations or resources that they've tapped into in their particular state to really strengthen their trainings. And then you all can post it on the SABE website to really help people to kind of get started thinking and get the wheels turning in different states when they begin their project.
Yes, Juliana was just saying it might be helpful for you guys to do short videos about some of the new things that you see, because videos really help the self-advocates to open up and have those discussions. So I think that's a great thing that we can add to the toolkit, is that it's okay to continue to develop it, and please share. You know, sharing would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's go ahead and talk to our team in Indiana and find out, where was your training? How did you advertise it? And what additional supports and resources did you have? Oh, we're having trouble hearing you.
Is that better?
Not as much as I would like. Try again, please.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
So our trainings were, one was at Noble. Noble is a provider for people with disabilities. And it's in Indianapolis. And then the other one was in Goshen. Just north of, it's in northern Indiana. And then the other one was in Jeffersonville at the library, which is down south in Indiana. How we advertised it.
Yeah. So this is Amanda. So advertising, we sent all of the, well, Carolina from Indiana Disability Rights put together flyers and kind of a social media toolkit, with some things that we could post on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram. And so I sent the flyers out to all of our chapters. I send out a weekly email to our self-advocate groups every week. And so I included that for several weeks in a row, and then also pushed it out on social media. And we utilized, like Kelsey said, one of our chapters, well, they're a provider agency, but they also have a self-advocate group. They hosted the first session at their agency. And then the second training up in Goshen, it wasn't at their agency, but one of our self-advocate groups helped us coordinate the place to have it, which was a local Salvation Army chapter building. So we were able to have it there. So we did advertise to the public, but we also advertised specifically to our chapters. And then the Southern Indiana one was a public location that we have used before in the past. So we tried to hit 3 different regional areas of the state.
Nice.
And we were going to talk about the additional.
I'm sorry, the person spoke, I couldn't hear you.
And then the additional support we had, this is Kristen, we reached out to the county clerks for each of the counties. Only one took us up on the offer, but the one that did was very, very cooperative. They came and did a demonstration of how to use the voting equipment, and then afterward gave people the opportunity, I think like California had said, to use kind of a mock ballot and at least practice using the machines. And it was also very convenient that that particular location, the Salvation Army, is one of the vote centers for that county. So people got to practice using the machines in a place that they actually can go to on election day. So having the county partner with us on that was a really big success.
And that was in the Goshen one, correct? The smaller location, the smaller town.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's like the very top north of Indiana.
So sometimes you think that you're going to have great success in the larger communities, when in some communities it's actually better to go to the smaller locations where they have more of a community feel and connect to that location because it was a voting location. It sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because sometimes we think that we're going to have better success at the larger locations, but they're actually, those staff are spread pretty thin, whereas in the smaller community, they may have more availability to help you out.
Yeah, so it worked out really well in that community.
Great. Okay, let's go to the next discussion topic. This next question is, did you ask participants who voted in the last election? And if yes, that you asked the question, how many? And did you register anyone at the vote training? And that is to vote. Register anyone to vote. This is in your report, so you can take a look at that and just let us know. And I know you may have multiple locations, so please tell us again what the location was where you registered people. Let's start with Arkansas. Tom or Darren?
Hello, I'm sorry, I was on mute. As I mentioned before, yes, we did have about, I'm believing it was about 3 or 4 people that was registered there at our conference who signed and did the registration forms. The rest that was just said that they was registered and had voted in the past. But we did get 3 or 4 to do the registration forms and return them in to us.
Okay, thank you.
And those were all done in Pulaski County and Little Rock.
Okay, great, thank you. And let's go ahead and have California tell us about did you ask the participants who had voted how many, and did you register anyone to vote?
We did ask how many had voted. I would say probably of the 60 people there were probably a good 40, 45 that signified somehow they had voted. We did actually, when we were talking about eligibility to vote and discussing that, I had support people from UCP that were there, and the room that we were in is a large room that has computers all the way around. So some of our staff were available to help those people who needed to either check to make sure they are registered to vote, because we were sharing all the resources and how you use the vote.net website, votela.net, and other resources. And so our staff was available to literally help people right then. And if they weren't registered, they could register online with support. So by the end, I think, of our third session, because we did 3 separate sessions in the same building, everyone, so it's probably about 60 people, everyone were registered to vote.
Okay, thank you. And
I should say that was eligible. I believe there were maybe 2 people that were not, 2 or 3 that were not eligible to vote at that time.
what was the issue? Do you remember?
Yeah, there was one person who was not a citizen as yet, and 2 other people who are conserved who are not eligible to vote.
But Terry, if I remember correctly, we did spend a little bit of time, and we've worked with the self-advocate groups at UCP, and we've shared information on for those folks who are under a conservatorship that
Yeah,
have had their right to vote taken away, that we've talked about the process that people can go through in the state of California to have that reevaluated and to possibly get their right to vote reinstated.
and we have successfully done that, actually,
Yeah.
with individuals that are eligible, and they are now voting.
Is this at the training or someone from the training, or is this another example that you've done in the past?
This is an example in the past. Everyone, literally everyone that is capable and eligible to vote by the voting criteria they are registered to vote. I mean, they're very excited about it.
Okay, thank you. And how about in Indiana? Did you ask the participants who had voted in the last election? And did you register anyone to vote during the training? And I know you did 3, so you might want to again clarify which location.
Sure, this is Kristen, and we didn't formally ask everyone at the trainings, but we did sort of during introductions. If people were willing to talk about if they voted, they could. If not, we didn't push it. So it's hard to say with each one how many people had, but we did do registration. So for Indianapolis, we had 25 attendees. 3 of them registered, and we checked registration status for 1. In Goshen, which was the northern location, we had about 17 people, and we had 3 register and 3 status checks. And then in Jeffersonville, of the 6 people that were there, actually all of them were already registered. So we checked to make sure, but we didn't have any new registrations for that one.
Okay, great. Wait to the next question. All right. And now we're going to talk about the toolkit. And if I'm recalling, no one had any trouble downloading the toolkit from the website. But let's talk a little bit about, I know it may be somewhere else, but I wanted to talk about the length of your training and what topics you presented during that time, because that may help people realize that you can do a lot in a small amount of time, or you can do a lot more detail when you have multiple trainings with the group. And then, did you use the toolkit to help you present? That's the next group of questions. So downloading, I didn't hear any problems on the report, but if you thought of something afterwards, please let us know now. Let's go ahead and have our team from Arkansas tell us about the toolkit, downloading it from the website, and the topics and length of your training.
Do you want me to take this one, Darren?
Yes.
Okay. So we didn't have any problem downloading the toolkit. That was no problems. With regards to your, I'm pulling up your next question. We pretty much followed the outline of the toolkit for our voting, but we made it more directly related to Arkansas laws. And you know, we talked about the right to vote. We talked about voter registration, what to expect when you get to the polls, the basics of voting for it. For some reason, our voting session was scheduled to last 4 hours from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. with a half-hour working lunch for individuals to meet and greet. But it did not take that long for some reason. I think it was because of the participants. We were having a difficult time engaging them into the topic. But I don't know, Darren, can you fill that in a little bit more about the training topic?
Well, yeah, as I said, you said the greeting topic.
Yes.
Yes, as I said, you know, as I said, we greeted them, and as I said, the topic we just told them that this is about training on voting and letting them know the importance of why it is important to go out and vote, and also educate themselves on who they are voting for. And as Tom said, the people, most of them was very into listening to what we was telling them and some was probably was like kind of trying to figure out where it is. Like the ones I said that was new to the voting, they was kind of figuring out because they never voted in their life, so it was they was trying to figure out what was the importance and why, you know, was the reason of them going out to vote, which we explained to them why it's important. But I said the topic was just straightforward on why it's important for them to get out and educate themselves on the candidates and look at, you know, if they can look at the news, and if they got problems with understanding, talk with somebody, a family member or somebody, support person, whoever can help them understand what the candidates' topics are, especially when it comes to something dealing with then that for medical reasons with their Medicaid or anything like that, or something dealing with whatever may be affecting them as in their disabilities or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it was just important that we let them know it was important for them to educate themselves on those topics before they go out and vote.
Yeah, and we also talked a lot about the photo ID requirement here in Arkansas, and what does that mean, and what can they expect. We also touched on you know, what to do if your polling place is not accessible, how to go about you know, who do you bring that issue up with at the polling location, but then who can you also call to report that it was not accessible. It kind of went through some common problems at a voting system, such as you know, what to do if the voting machine is not hooked up properly, or you can't vote in private. Who do you talk to? And just gave them some resources on Election Day, the Election Protection Hotline. You know, they could call Disability Rights Arkansas. So it was a lot of information on voting.
Yes.
Did you happen to do both activities, the candy activity and the candidates activity?
No, we did not really do the candy activity or the you talk about like kind of do a real acting on what it's like to vote for a candidate or something like that?
Well, the candidates activity is where you have the 3 candidates and which one would you vote for and why and what would change your mind.
No,
So did you get a
no,
chance to do those?
no, as I said, we did not. We basically went straightforward on, as I said, training and telling them why. Because as I said, most of the ones there was playing with voting. They've done it in the past, and the ones that we was talking to, we were trying to make sure they understood the importance of voting and things. We did not get around to that part of the training.
Okay. That's those 2 activities are there to help you engage people that may be more shy about talking about it, because once you break through and you have a little bit of fun, but you also tell them that they are confident and they, you know, you basically, when you make decisions, you're weighing different items against each other and making a decision, even as simple as, you know, things that you're going to eat or things that you're going to do, and
Right.
letting them know that they can confidently do those things, and that voting, every time they make those kinds of decisions, they're making a vote on how they're going to spend their money or their time, and that may help you engage them in more of a discussion item.
Right.
Yeah, and then the candidates activity, like I said, it helps them to see, we make them to the extremes so that they can kind of see that there are political candidates that fall into these different categories of, you know, being kind of not always seeming like they know what's going on, but behind the scenes, they may be this really passionate supporter of people with disabilities, and that's the Sally socialite or Sam socialite. And then the Perry community, they may be outwardly doing all the work that you want them to do, but morally they may have issues that you have problems with because of your belief systems and stuff like that. So, and then we have the legislator, the Leo or Lily legislator, who's been around forever, and it might seem like they should know a lot more, but they've kind of lost their passion for the people. And those candidates do exist. And we need to help people to see those differences in candidates and to help them see that there's different people out there that they can vote for, but their belief system impacts a lot of why they vote for people, and that they're looking for facts and information, but they're also letting, you know, their beliefs and feelings and moral values come into play when they vote for people. So voting has lots of passion behind it. We need to sometimes help people use these discussion items to help them see that they really do have all the tools that they need to become well-educated, informed voters with a passion for their beliefs. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
it may be something for you to take a look at next time when you're not having as much participation as you want. You know,
Right, I do agree. You know, we are planning on making sure that we get all that together. So when we do go out, we will have everything together. So the people we are training will get the best from the training that they can use to make the right decisions in their voting.
right.
Yes. So Darren, this is Juliana. Bill and I will be going to the SEALS conference in Arkansas in October. Maybe we can work together and activities with the group that we'll be working with.
Oh, okay. All right, that works. Thank you.
It does take practice to facilitate the discussions that both activities bring about, but they're designed to help you get more interaction with your audience and your participants, and to also remind people that have been voting for a really long time why they do it, because sometimes we think, oh, I'll just do this really quickly, and sometimes they haven't done their research on the candidates, and later on they're kind of disheartened by, oh, well, they're not doing exactly what I wanted. Maybe if I would have spent more time investigating them, I would be more satisfied now. So it increases a lot of the different items that come up for people. Thank you for your report. Let's go ahead and talk to California about using the toolkit and the topics that you presented, and how useful the different activities were for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can touch a little bit on what we did, and then Terry, if you want to add anything. So we used the videos were the biggest thing that we used. We had a pretty good discussion on the scenarios that were brought up in those videos, and it was really great hearing the feedback that the advocates had to the video, and I mentioned earlier just some of the reactions that they had, and ways that they, some of the situations were very similar to things that they've experienced themselves, but also figuring out different ways that may not have been brought up in the video to address those specific situations. And then we also talked about as I mentioned, we had the League of Women Voters representatives coming out, and we were able to, they have a resource that they provide ahead of every election. It's called the Easy Voter Guide, and it has information in it that talks about a little bit about the candidates, and who are running for the larger state positions like governor and congressional positions. And then also it has a really helpful breakdown, because in California, during or ahead of most of the big elections, they have state propositions that are included on the ballot, and they have to do with different initiatives, statewide initiatives that have been introduced by different state representatives. And with a lot of the propositions, it can be kind of confusing, because a lot of times when you're voting for something, it's hard to tell if you vote in favor of something, what that will mean, or if you vote against something, what that will mean. And this Easy Voter Guide that the League of Women Voters has put together has a really good breakdown that kind of explains what each vote, like if you vote yes, what this will mean. If you vote no, here's what it'll mean. And it has, I mean, just the way they explain it and they break it down is really helpful for any voter, but especially for voters with disabilities. It just gives a really step-by-step, easy to understand explanation of what your vote will mean if you vote a particular way or not. So that was really, really helpful, and we kind of used the tools in the toolkit to kind of strengthen the topic for each of the 3 trainings. And so we talked about the videos, and then we also talked about the cards that were included, and the activity cards and we also we reviewed the handout on the voter rights laws and talked about how those relate to things that go on in the polling place and the types of assistance that you can request when you go to your local polling place or at any point throughout the voting process, whether it's needing some assistance registering to vote, or if you're a vote by mail voter, the types of assistance that you can get to complete your vote by mail ballot. So we used the toolkit as sort of a springboard to help launch our discussion for each part of the training. So that was it was a nice way to sort of start out the conversation for each of the parts of the training.
Cool. Gabe, you mentioned that you did it 3 times with the
Yes.
same group. How did you break it down per session?
So we did one session was focused on the propositions, and we talked about that was when we had the representatives from the League of Women Voters come out, and we went through all of the propositions that were included on the June ballot, and so they talked a little bit about how to first use the Easy Voter Guide and the types of information that were included in it, and then also to kind of use it as a way to sort of better understand what is going to be on your particular ballot. So that was one training, and then the first training that we did was talking about general accessibility and polling place accessibility and your rights as a voter with a disability. And that was when we used the videos, because we talked about the scenarios that were brought up in the videos, and that was, it gave people a chance to sort of chime in and talk about their personal experiences. And it was a really great dialogue, because it was a lot of people who sort of had similar experiences in the audience, and then some people who had vastly different experiences, and so they were able to talk about their going to vote in person, or several people brought up their experience voting by mail, and the pluses and minuses of that. And then the third was when we had the representatives from the county come out, and from LA County, and they provided a demonstration of the voting system, the new voting system that will be used in 2 years for the 2020 election.
All right. Nice.
And our audience, or our advocates, self-advocates, ranged in age from literally 18 all the way up to, I believe the oldest individual there was in her late 70s. So we had a full range of people with varied experiences, and it was really great. I mean, some of the things that came up on voting rights and accessibility and what people have had to do to make sure that they voted, it was pretty exciting to see the interest, the fortitude that people have, and kind of tenacity to make sure that they can exercise their right to vote. I believe the woman who is in her late 70s, she's been kind of a pioneer in disability rights here in for people with cerebral palsy in California. And she told a story about how she was in a rehabilitation place during one election and what it took to make sure she voted, and what she had to initiate to make sure that someone brought her a ballot and that she was actually able to vote. And I think that really inspired other people. The other thing is having LA County really partnering with them and having them come out with the machines, so that people could have a hands-on. Our group actually is very interactive, and so we didn't have to, I mean, I've been working with them for many years, and so there's a desire. They definitely want to talk about these issues, and they also want to help other people. And they were interested in the videos because they could relate to some of the things that had happened years ago to them. And they actually have said, you know, they would like to do things to help other people that that may not have had as much experience. So younger voters or voters in other locations that haven't, you know, had some of the experience that they've had.
Did you use the activities, the candy activity and the candidate activity to help any of your discussions?
You know, we kind of gave them an overview, and they really helped tell us what they wanted to do. They actually wanted to see the videos and react to those, and it was interesting. We showed one of the videos, like the rude poll worker, and it got this discussion going, and it moved the discussion like forward, so that they ended up talking about several things that end up happening in the other videos. So it was just really interesting to see how engaged they were, and that I think they were very interested knowing what happens in other states, and what is unique here in California, and how we got to where we are right now in California. And again, I think LA County Voter Registrar's Office and the various committees, Gabe and I both serve on a committee that deals with issues involving voters with special needs. And we also serve on another committee that has worked on the technology, and we've engaged many of these individuals in helping to give input, so that the machines will be totally accessible, and they actually are. I mean, as I said, people use their feet, one person used their wrist, somebody else used an extension to their hand, someone else used an extension with their foot. It's like a pointer, if you will. And all of them were able to vote in this mock election. It was all successful.
And as Terry mentioned, the committee that she and I both serve on in LA County, it's not unique to LA County either. Actually a majority of all of the counties in California have some version of what they call a voting accessibility advisory committee, and it's made up of primarily people with disabilities or staff who work at disability service organizations in their respective counties. And there are ones throughout the state that are more active than others, but a good number of the counties throughout the state have formed these committees, and they, excuse me, they provide ongoing feedback to the county election officials on things that they can do to make things, the voting process and any programs that the county puts together and organizes more accessible for voters with disabilities.
And we've actually really seen this work. The people, some of the participants that are older have been around where there have been voting systems that none of them could access physically, independently. And they want to vote, have a private vote and be independent in voting. And so by Gabe and I working with groups out in the community and bringing their information and bringing them into the discussions too on things as important as access to the equipment used for voting, they have literally seen in very few years a total turnaround from going from Inkadot, which none of them physically can use independently, to a system that we will have in 2020, a full-blown system in LA County that will be accessible to everyone. And so they're just very, very excited. But I think this toolkit can help people who are at the beginning. Like I saw the younger people in our group, and I was really focused on helping some of our more experienced folks help the younger individuals who haven't had these experiences yet. And I saw that engagement happen. We have a young man who is just, he's only voted, I think, once. And he's very, very excited now in helping in the future. So I think the excitement can grow and extend to other people if we get excited about these things and if we bring other people into this project who can kind of open up some possibilities for people. And I think the League of Women's Voters very definitely does that. And certainly LA County voter registrar and his team have been incredibly great with that.
Thank you. That's a lot of good information. Let's go ahead and talk to folks in Indiana about the toolkit and the topics you presented and how helpful it was for you, and did you do the activities in the toolkit?
Hi, this is Kristen, and we did use some of the material from the toolkit, but we found that the attention span of our audiences was best if we kept it between like an hour and a half to 2 hours. So we just really tried to prioritize the information that we felt was most important for them going into the election this November. So we pulled from each of the topics, but just really tried to, like I said, prioritize so we could condense it into that like 2 hour window. So we did use all the topics, but we also customized a little bit to touch on what some of the voting rights are specific to Indiana. So for example, like we have deadlines for registration. You have to register 29 days ahead. We have specific polling hours. We also talked about the different ways here in Indiana that you can vote absentee. We also have a photo ID law like Arkansas, so we did a lot of examples and images of IDs that would be acceptable for the polls. We talked about voting and guardianship And we also talked about different resources that are available that both our organization and the self-advocates have. And of course, our Secretary of State, so that if people need a reminder of their rights or they have questions, they know where to go to get credible information. And as far as activities, again, like I said, we were trying to keep it within that like 2-hour window. So we did some activities that we felt fit with what the priorities were. So we did one as we were talking about credibility with information and whether information is biased or not. We went through various forms of information like the newspaper or social media or debates. You know, we presented several different options and asked the audience to do thumbs up or thumbs down, whether they would trust it or not, and then talked about why they did thumbs up or thumbs down. Because as we found, if you say Facebook, some people will do thumbs up, some people will do thumbs down, because it really does depend. Is it the CNN Facebook page that's posting it, or is it, you know, your Uncle Joe who really leans heavily one way? So it would just depend on exactly what that was. So we got a lot of really good responses and good engagement from people on the thumbs up, thumbs down activity. And we also, at the beginning, just went around and had everybody talk about if they voted before or if they haven't, why they are interested in voting. And that got a lot of good engagement as well.
So it's a little bit similar, but a little bit different. So you took your own spin on it, sounds like. So
Yeah.
And so you said that you used pieces of the toolkit throughout, but you added a lot of your own, if I took that correctly.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to that. So this one is about the voter project slides. The question is, did you have any problems adding your state information to the PowerPoint slides? And this is just a quick, did it flow well? Did it work well to add these questions in about your state and about going to jail or having the guardianship discussion or any of the ID laws? And I know some of you have mentioned that it was pretty easy to add the ID rules, but what about the other stuff?
So this is Tom from Arkansas. When we incorporated the slides, when we looked at the slides, we had no problem adding information related to the state in the slides. It was really easy. So
Great.
I don't know if you want any other information, but it was really easy.
Okay. And did you get good discussion on any of those questions about the felony or jail or voter guardianship or anything?
Well, we didn't exactly get any like that from the but we did explain to them about what things like what has to be done. Chris, the guy who works with the voter project here at our office, did explain to them what necessary steps they would have to go through if they had a felony eviction and what steps would have to be taken to be able to vote if their voter rights was taken away from them, and if they had a guardian in place, that what steps that they would have to go through with judges and going in, talk with them to have those have that taken off from their records so they can be able to vote. If it's not, I'm sorry, Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If it's not something that was just given like a guardianship that was just placed on them, and there was some restrictions from them voting, being able to vote.
Yeah. So, as Darren mentioned, in Arkansas, we have very strict guardianship laws, in that if you have a guardian, you cannot vote unless you petition the court to get that right restored. And not very many people are aware of that. So, explaining the whole guardianship process here in the state, and then is very confusing and difficult. And then you throw in the fact that, if after 2011 you were granted guardianship, you may or may not be able to vote. So we did touch on that and provide information on that, because that seems to be the biggest barrier here in the state. When we go out and do voter trainings and talk about voter registration, is talking about the guardianship aspect. Because we don't want to get people excited to vote and then turn around and get them registered, and then on election day or even before have their guardian say, no, you cannot vote.
We also covered that here in California, and Gabe and I had sort of led a discussion with people on that. Here in California, there's legislation that protects voters who may have previously been deemed incompetent, who are actually not deemed by a court. And so we've been really successful, Disability Rights and UCP, helping people to really understand what their rights are and what the actual legislation says. And it's pretty exciting, because we've been able to see people in their 40s or 50s who had never voted because they thought they couldn't. Actually now, with their understanding, they're able to go out and vote, and to see that that change and the confidence that they now have from actually going out and voting is just, I mean, I think that's the thing that motivates me and a lot of other people to work with individuals and really encourage them to know their rights.
And one of the other things too, we use the slide to kind of act as a springboard with regard to the questions about state ID laws and voting while incarcerated. We because like in California, there are only a small, very, very small handful of situations where people should be asked for their ID when they show up to the polling place, and it has to do mostly with if they've been registered to be a vote by mail voter and they're showing up at a polling place to vote for one of the first times in person. So we used these questions as sort of a way to kind of start the conversation to say, in typical situations, you should not be asked for your ID, and if you are, here's what you can do, and you can gave them information on how they handle those types of situations. And going back to the question about being incompetent to vote, talking about the rights that people have who are, if they have had their right to vote taken away, and here's how you can get it reinstated, and talking about some of the background regarding the state bill that was passed concerning conservatorship, and talking about the issues that led to that bill being passed, and also what that bill said and your rights as a result of that bill being signed. So
Sounds like really good discussions. How about in Indiana? Did you have any problems adding this information, and did it help your discussions also?
Yeah, we didn't really have any issues adding the information, and like Kristen said, I mean, a big chunk of our presentation was what is required here in Indiana. So we added in all of the pictures of the different IDs that are required, because we do require an ID. We also made sure to stress the fact that Indiana does not have a guardianship or conservatorship restriction, so that even if they were under guardianship, that they could in fact register and vote, and that they might have heard that because of if they have friends or family in other states, but that is not applicable here in Indiana. So we did stress those things. We do have the incarceration rule, so we mentioned that. We mentioned that the only way, that's really the only way that you can not be allowed to vote here in Indiana, and being a citizen.
Okay. Great. Oops. As you can tell, I'm not good at working the PowerPoint. Okay. The next question is, do you have more voter trainings planned, and that we want to continue even though this project is done? We would like to know how those go, because we, as I mentioned earlier in this presentation, we want to continue always to improve the training that's made available for states to use, and we would like this kind of reporting to continue. Do you have any more trainings planned in Arkansas?
So this is Tom, and one of the things that we are looking at is conducting additional trainings with self-advocates and partnering with People First as Election Day approaches. So yes, we do plan to have additional voter trainings. As to how many, those are still being planned, but I have a staff person who's dedicated 100% to getting the voter trainings done, as well as voter registration drives. In addition, we're also going to be conducting trainings with poll workers here in Pulaski County, which is the largest county in Arkansas, to focus on disability aspects. And we are, I believe, having 20 different training sessions with them. So not only for self-advocates, but also for poll workers as well.
That's a significant number of trainings for the poll workers. That's great. Let us know how that goes. And you know, especially if you use the tools in the toolkit, because what we found is that a lot of poll workers think that most of the issues that we're talking about don't happen. And so sometimes just the fact that we let them know that, yeah, we're still getting reports on these things, and that this is how you can help. Make this a good experience to where we can retain the voters as much as get them to register and keep it a good positive experience. So I'm excited to hear how that goes.
Yes, we'll certainly keep you updated.
Great. How about in California? Do you have any other trainings planned?
Yeah, absolutely. I think UCP is committed to training, ongoing training available, and I definitely am committed to that, and will be working with disability rights, I hope, in the future, as well as LA County voter registrar and his staff to serve on the committees and help get individuals with disabilities into the conversations before decisions are made, particularly on voting equipment, but on other access issues.
And the other thing that Terry and I will be participating with moving forward, particularly in LA County, is they're working towards a new new sort of setup for how they run elections. So they're trying to phase out polling places and incorporate things called vote centers that will be open for a larger number of days ahead of an election. So it's seen as a way of making voting more convenient for voters, not just for voters with disabilities, but all voters. And UCP has been selected as a site for one of the community meetings to share information and allow community members to provide feedback on where they would like these vote centers to be, how they would like these vote centers to run, and just give input on the process, on the planning process. So they'll be doing those meetings in the next several months. So it's like Terry mentioned, it's ongoing, and we're going to be continuing to work with LA County, and myself personally, I will be doing a number of trainings for other counties on polling place accessibility and things for them to do to increase accessibility and ease of the voting process.
Okay, so now that I have finished putting all of the rows of cord in my hair, my cornrows are officially done. They look so good.
Thank you so much. Sorry for that background noise. Hopefully we've identified it. And then in Indiana, are you planning more trainings?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We are doing a webinar, and we've been asked to present at our local advocate or ARC conference and self-advocate conference in October. We've also been asked to do another training.
We have a couple of chapters that weren't able to make it to one of our 3 events, and they requested us to come to closer to their area. So we're working on potentially scheduling some of those, but we will be doing a webinar recorded training because we had such we had a lot of people that, because of transportation issues, couldn't attend in person. So we want to make sure we can still get that information out so that maybe our self-advocate chapters can maybe show the training during a meeting, or just watch it individually. So we do have a couple more things in the works.
Well, all of those sound really exciting, and we're always looking for new and creative ideas to get the training out. Let's see. Make sure. Just a friendly reminder, as part of the agreement that you all have, we need to always do our paperwork just like any other project, and we require that the contract be signed, that the trainings are done in the community, which you've all excelled at, very, very nicely done. I've gotten reports from everyone. I think I still need some evaluations. Those who've turned them in, thank you. And we need a W-9 from the self-advocacy organization or their fiscal agent. And we need an invoice on letterhead with the contact person and the address of where the check should be sent to. So I don't know if you have those items available to you, especially an invoice. But if you don't, we have samples that we can send you if you need help with that. And Juliana will be contacting you after she reviews everyone's information, making sure that we've got all of those pieces in place so that we can make the donation to the self-advocacy organization for their time and support. And so just, is there any questions about any of those pieces?
Teresa, this is Tom from Arkansas. When you mentioned the invoice, what do you, besides the contact information, what do you want on the invoice? How should we structure it? Is it just for, go ahead.
Yeah, the SABE GoVoter project,
Okay.
identifying the self-advocacy group, and for completed community training would work sufficiently for that.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be really complicated. We just have to, just like every other thing, we have to have a paper trail so we can get you funded.
Right. Okay.
So I just a question on the paperwork. Are you going to need, if like Gabe and I partnered, so Disability Rights and UCP, are you going to need the same paperwork from both agencies or just the physical agent or the self-advocacy organization?
The funding that we are providing will go to the self-advocacy organization that hopefully you can use it for helping self-advocates in the future. A lot of groups set it aside for funding that transportation issue a lot of times, or
Sure.
helping groups get around the state. But it is to go to the self-advocacy organization, not the PNA, unless for some structural reason the PNA is the fiscal agent, which is sometimes what happens. It's not as common, but it does happen occasionally. And so it's just the one organization that would get the funding.
Okay, and so
Organization.
the invoice would come from the self-advocacy organization?
That's correct.
And then are both organizations supposed to complete evaluations, or
You
do
should
you
have
want
done
just
that at your
one
training.
consolidated? I'm sorry.
The participants should have done that at the training. If you have not, then we can take a look at what issues came up for you and how we can alleviate that. Or if you can do, in the past, it does happen, you forget that last piece. It's easy to do, you're wrapping up. In the past, occasionally we have accepted interviews with a few of the individuals who had attended the training and how they've used it. So, you know what I mean, afterwards. But that we don't prefer that way because we like to hear how they felt about it right at the time. But if for some reason you did not complete evaluations, we do accept, 5 or 10, however easily it is for you to get a post-evaluation from participant self-advocates in the training.
Okay, and are those attached to something that we've been sent?
The evaluation form is on the website, on the GoVoter page.
And
Okay.
that evaluation, also many PNAs or other organizations have a post-training evaluation, and that is okay to use theirs if they have something that they typically use. We do accept those,
Okay.
but there is one on the website for you to use if you do not have something handy. And if it is a post-evaluation, then just add that question about how have you used the training since you've been trained. Just because it's a post-evaluation, it would make it more meaningful if it's dated, later why we had to do that and if they've used the information.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
I believe so. I think.
And you can always call us and talk to us about it. If you didn't give them out, we can work on how you can get that information. And it's usually, a lot of the people that you have attend those kinds of events. A lot of them you continue to see at other things, or they're part of your organization and they don't mind a 5-minute phone call to say, oops, I forgot to do this. Do you mind taking 5 minutes to answer a few questions? Most people are pretty, considerate of that does happen. So
For sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. We try not to make it as difficult as you guys have done a tremendous amount of work. And we just want to make the tool available to you. It's not meant to be overly complicated, but we do require paper trail.
Okay.
So this is Tom. One last question on the invoice. Who should it be sent to, Teresa or Juliana?
You can send it to me. That would be fine.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Project Vote.
It's my email is moreadvocacy@hotmail.com.
Okay.
moreadvocacy@hotmail.com. And because I work directly with the finance committee and can get those processed quickly for you. Any of the other documents you can send to me if you don't have them to us already.
Okay.
And we'll put together your file and we'll contact you if there's anything that we're missing for any reason. Any other questions? Okay. Did you have another question?
I'm just trying to clarify the form that the training report.
Mm-hmm.
Are both agencies supposed to fill that out, or with Gabe and I, we've sort of worked together on it, and I know Gabe sent in a report. Do you want 2 reports or just one combined?
One combined. It's all about your working in partnership and just checking with each other and making sure that you didn't miss anything and they didn't miss anything when you were thinking about it. And yes, we encourage you guys whenever you do trainings together to, and in the future, follow up with us and send those in together, because I think this partnerships, all of them have been very successful and yielded lots of great information that will help both of your organizations when you do voting events and activities in the future. So I think it's a great opportunity. There were several great ideas that you shared in different reports. There was an idea about having goals. I will definitely consider that in the future trainings, that groups come up with goals together. And also, we want to let you know there's 2 activities that we're going to let you know about when they are scheduled. One is that individuals who do want to bring in more partners, we will be having a webinar in the near future about using the topic 9, building partnerships and working together with maybe groups that you have not worked as much together or want to work together and you're just not sure how to get it going. We are going to do a webinar about that in the near future. And also, we will be contacting you and sending you our survey that we do after the election. You'll get a SABE GoVoter voter experience survey, and we would welcome the opportunity to partner with you again to have surveys filled out for your state, because there will be benefits for self-advocates at the 2020 conference. We'll be giving out a few re-registrations for the self-advocacy conference in 2020. And so we want to make sure that you guys know about that. So the state that sends in the most surveys will win the competition, and we work with the self-advocacy group and the PNA in that state to identify those individuals who will be receiving those free registrations. So, so you'll be getting stuff from us occasionally, and we, just so you have it, there's my email and phone number again if you have any questions about anything that we've talked about today. And I'm really excited to continue to get information from you about your future trainings. One last time for any questions. How about in Arkansas? Do you guys have any more questions?
I don't.
Darren?
Darren, do you have questions?
Oops.
No, I do not.
Okay, great. Just if anything comes up, let us know. How about in California?
This is Gabe. I just had one quick question. Just so I'm aware, or I know what all to include on the invoice, do you have like a template example of what the invoice should look like, just so want to make sure I'm including everything?
Sure, Juliana or I will send that to you later today.
Okay.
Just so you have that template.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Gary, do you have any other questions?
No, I just wanted to thank you and everyone that's participated. And I think things that Gabe and I learned from this early on is in order to engage the individuals there, we actually gave them an overview and asked them to select which topics they wanted to focus in on. And I think that really helped because they actually helped structure what the training would be.
Yes, that is a great way of looking at it, to identify those issues that are most important to your audience.
And also, it just helped because they were then excited about the things we were discussing. So they were sort of energized and engaged in a way that if we had chosen the topics and the subjects and sort of the exercises on our own and then brought it to them, it might not have been as effective. But
Right.
by making them the decision makers as to what we were going to be talking about and how we were going to be talking about it, it really sort of engaged the discussion and just made things, you know, it was a more effective training, and in the end, it just was more beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, they're driving.
Yeah, they were driving it and gave and I a great checklist. I kept referring back to it. And
Yeah.
at the end, you know, we were able to make sure we did everything.
Yeah.
And it might be exciting for you guys to think about who in the room was really excited to be part of the training and add them in as a co-presenter with you next time, because they will be able to help engage the audience in ways that you can't even imagine right now.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Definitely. And I mean, I to other groups and other organizations that I go to, it's interesting because, like I said, I do presentations and trainings in a lot of other counties throughout the state, and every new group or new organization that I go to, I'm always not because I mean to, but I'm always comparing the conversations and the discussions that Terry and I have had with the self-advocates at UCP, because they've been so lively and so great, and we've gotten a lot done and talked about a lot of stuff. So I find myself just saying, oh, well, what did we do at UCP that really worked? And it's helped me with a lot of organizations and planning trainings for different groups that I've, am doing, going down the road. I mean, it's just been really, really helpful for me. So
I'm glad. That's great to hear. And in Indiana, we have your team there. How about Amanda? Do you have any questions or comments?
No, we're good.
And Kelsey, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay. And Carolina?
No, thank you. Yes, I think we everybody did a good job at like asking questions that we already might have. So thank you so much.
Okay. And Kristen, did you have anything?
We're all set. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like to thank you again for all your hard work and your time, and please stay in touch with us. We look forward to continuing to work with everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.